about 92% of the SaaS companies fail within the first 3 years of running their business. I had two credit cards. I think a total of 10 lakh rupees or something available in total credit with my two credit cards. I just maxed out both of them, and I ended up generating about $350,000. Having an investor basically is like trying to sell a piece of your soul to someone that you're never gonna get back, right? So the question is, do you want someone to own your soul? That's the real question that you need to ask yourself. So they just feel everything will happen magically. All I have to do is just push the product online and boom, magically everything will happen, right? This is where the problem starts. When you actually go out there and ask people for money, even if it's $1, people will rip you apart. People will question your identity. People will question your product's identity. People will ask why. If you are starting with your personal brand, you need to have your own voice. You need to have your own identity, right? You cannot just go and copy people. Personal branding means being personal with people. So you have to expose your vulnerability in public. If you cannot do that, you are not doing personal branding, right? You have to utilize a platform at the right time, at the right stage itself, because algos keep on changing. The algos keep on getting updated. So what has worked last year might not work this year again, right? This year things are working very differently.
For all of you guys who are joining in, I'm sure you must have heard of Udit. Udit is a serial entrepreneur. He's a very, very close friend of mine and the club. So he has had a journey of both successes and failures, half and half. And right now he's running two very successful businesses. He's the co-founder of PitchGround as well as First Sales.io. He basically is one of those very few people in the Indian ecosystem who basically decided to bootstrap his journey. And currently PitchGround basically valued at around $20 million. And now the new journey of First Sales.io, the new baby of Udit and his team, taken flight. So welcome Udit, welcome to the Builders Club.
Thank you so much, Sohail, for the invite. Honored to be here.
So can you help me understand what exactly does PitchGround do?
So PitchGround is a SaaS marketplace. You can call it Amazon for softwares, right? In a very layman's language, just like you go and purchase like groceries or phones or laptops or regular things, right? Whatever you want on Amazon. Similarly, you come and purchase softwares from PitchGround. So we wanted to make sure that the discovery of new software becomes easy, because that was one of the biggest reasons why SaaS companies would fail. So when I landed on this article by Lighter Capital, Lighter Capital is one of the biggest debt fund VCs for SaaS companies. They lend money to SaaS companies. So they said that about 92% of the SaaS companies fail within the first 3 years of running their business. And majority of the reason why they fail is because of lack of distribution, right? Because 88% out of every 100 companies, 88 companies are built by developers, right? The developers are generally the CEOs, and that's not a good sign, because they feel they have built the best product. They feel that everything will sell by themselves. They feel that everything will happen by themselves. So they just feel everything will happen magically. All I have to do is just push the product online and boom, magically everything will happen, right? And this is where the problem sort of like started having it. So when I discovered this problem, because when I spoke with, prior to again me launching PitchGround, I spoke with close to around, I think 300 plus SaaS founders on call, right? I did a lot of research. I tried to understand why do companies fail, especially SaaS companies fail. And when I realized that majority of the problem is because of lack of discovery, which is distribution, right? That's when I ended up building up the platform where companies can just come in, launch their product. And I was also very inspired from Kickstarter.com or GoIndiegogo.com. I was already a customer of Kickstarter, so I was like, why there isn't such platforms that really exist for SaaS companies as well. So that was the whole idea of me like building it up, and that's when I ended up building up PitchGround, and that's what PitchGround does. It helps SaaS companies to come and get that initial traction.
Got it. And then you sell these products to agencies, different agencies which are out there.
Yeah, now we have a much larger pool of ICPs, but initially and even right now, like our number one ICP has always been agencies.
Ah, and then you basically realize that, with lesser effort, you're able to sell more number of units to the required companies or required people.
It's not just about selling the required number of units, but it's also selling to educated users. So that
Ah,
also helps with lowering down your churn massively, because when you're
yeah.
selling to educated users, right, they're not going to come back and ask you questions like how to do I even need this, right? Because the reason
Mhm.
why they bought it is because they have a need for it. And also at the same time, since our market focus has always been a North American market, right? So people over there really understand what is SaaS. They really understand what is software. They really are mature enough to just go out there and make a purchase, right? So that was the situation. The Indian market has lately matured thanks to a lot of edtech companies. A lot of people have started understanding what is software and the importance of SaaS as well. So now you would see that the adoption rate in Indian ecosystem in general for SaaS has been quite acceptance, and it's growing quite aggressively. But back in 2018-19, that wasn't the case, right? Like people would see software as an expense and not as an investment. So people would
Mm.
like buy softwares. They would rather like hire people to do something that can be automated with the software. So people would be ready to pay like 50,000 to 1 lakh rupees as a salary to someone rather than buying a software that can do the same job for like 3 4 thousand rupees, just because of the fact that they did not want to adopt any sort of software. That has changed completely because again there have been salary hikes and this inflation coming in. So
Of course.
companies have finally sort of accepted SaaS, and now the acceptance of SaaS have like been pretty granular. So that's what we did. That's how we sort of really grew PitchGround during the initial stages.
Got it, got it. Let's just probably delve a little bit back into the initial days of PitchGround. So I am very fascinated about how did you people figure out the product market fit, the initial customers, and the feedback that you people got, and thirdly, the go-to market. What are the different channels that you explored, and how exactly did those experiments go? And finally, what are the ones which are working for you now?
So prior to running that, when I was also running GoPBN, right? When I sold that and when I was running Funnelbake, I was also running my agency on the sites, right? So I was doing a lot of performance marketing because I always believe that the best way to learn is on other people's money. That's the best way to learn. So if you ever want to learn any skill, just start an agency. And start acquiring some of the customers in that particular niche. That's the best way to learn any skill that you want, right? Just start an agency. Again, don't have to like set up a crazy company or something. You just have it can just be like a proprietary thing as well. Just start an agency. And I ended up managing about $50 million in ad spending. Pretty much most of the real estate ads that you might have seen in 2017-16 was basically ran by me, right? So that sort of really helped me to understand performance marketing. And there were two skills that I had developed when it came to marketing, which I was very confident about. The first was outreaching, because when I was building up my very first startup, obviously I didn't have the money to compete against GoDaddy and pay like $31 per click, right? Right now the same is about $50-$60 a click. So there's no way. You got to be innovative in terms of how you're going to acquire those customers. So that's when I learned about email outreaching back about like 11 years ago. And it used to be all manual. Now it's all automated thanks to all the technologies and per sales IO as well. But back in those days, it used to be all like crazy manual work and manual email. So I would pretty much end up sending a lot of manual emails to a lot of people. And that was one of the skills, and the second was the performance marketing. So these were the two skills that I was very confident that I know I can drive results. I don't know about any other channel. I don't know if I'm going to be able to drive any other channel, right? Even with SEO and everything takes a lot of time. So SEO for me was not the right channel at this point of stage. So when I started with PitchGround, I had already suffered a very heavy loss. So I had two credit cards. Both of them had about like $5,000. Sorry, about $7,000 in limit. So I had about like I think a total of 10 lakh rupees or something available in total credit with my two credit cards. I just maxed out both of them, and I ended up generating about $350,000. So The entire money went into performance marketing. The ROS back in 2017-18 was fabulous on Facebook. It's not the same anymore, but I literally drove like crazy ROS back then. So I think if I remember correctly, I ended up spending about like $10,000 with both of my cards, if I remember correctly, and I ended up generating about $350,000 in roughly 3 months of time. So that's how I got my initial traction. I was very clear about the audience itself because I've been like marketer pretty much like for over a decade now. So I knew about my GTM. My GTM strategy was very straightforward, that focus on agencies, because agencies are the ones who have money. They are the ones who are also like managing at least like 10 customers on an average per agency. Because I had ran an agency, so I knew that they are the ultimate decision makers for most of the companies, most of the startups that they are managing, or most of the companies that they are managing. So we just focused on the agencies, and that worked out brilliantly for us. So these agencies would come and just purchase in bulk for all of their customers. So instead of focusing on the end customers, we first start focusing on the middle person who was managing like most of those projects. So for example, if we were to sell like an SEO software, we would not sell to an end company who would use that SEO software, but we would rather sell it to agency, and agency would basically manage 10 clients. So they would buy and purchase in bulk, right, for each of their clients, rather than just one purchase. We ended up having 10 purchases. So this is how we were able to like scale up and focus on our ROS, and we were able to really sort of dive into having a much better ROS, which was very, very critical and crucial during the initial stages of the business. So that's how we acquired our first set of customers.
One of the things that I want to touch upon is basically the whole idea, and this is something which a lot of first-time founders fail in, is basically the whole idea of gaining traction versus making revenue, right? So a lot of people basically try and get a lot of customers to test the product out or get them in the funnel, and that is something which they consider it as success. But I think till the time you make that first dollar, nothing else matters, basically. Right.
No,
So what's your take on that?
I 100% agree with you. So I think in the idea stage that we talk about in the Builders Club, right, the Builders Camp actually, that we talk about, right, there's a concept that I shared over there for the very first time. It is known as the $100 concept, and this $100 concept works in a way where you reach out to 100 people, right, and try to ask them $1 for your idea. So now you will realize that when you actually go out there and ask people for money, right? Even if it's $1, people will rip you apart. People will question your identity. People will question your product's identity. People will ask why. It's not easy to make someone take out their credit card, because someone taking out their credit card is basically a way of enabling the first trust factor between you and the other person, right? It's not the amount, again, it's the fact that someone has taken out the credit card or someone has taken out their debit card, right? If someone has just made that payment to you, that is basically they have started trusting you. Now, why would someone make that payment to you is because they feel that your solution can solve their problem. So this is where the concept sort of kicks in, right? That you reach out to 100 people and go and talk to them about the problem. And these are the 100 people who would be your potential ICP in your industry. So if you're selling cycles, for an example, whom are you going to sell those cycles to, right? Are you focusing on athletes, or are you focusing on someone who is just fitness freak, or are you focusing on someone who is a delivery boy and is using and buying in the gig economy, basically, right? Who is your ICP? Basically, there can be multiple ICPs, but initially you have to just focus on one ICP, because every ICP will have its own problem set. So when you talk to those ICP, you will start realizing that people who have pain, who have issues, they would go out and share those issues with you. And this is where when you start learning and start talking with those 100 set of initial people, they would tell you what exactly is their problem. And if your solution is a right fit for them, they would be ready to pay you even in the idea stage of your product, because you're telling them that, look, I'm giving you a very heavy discount. And this is where the early adoption concept comes into picture, and the whole word of early adopters comes into picture, right? Because these early adopters are ready to pay in for a potential solution, and that too, they know for the fact that they would be getting a very heavy discount. So when you, let's say, convince 20 people out of those 100 people, now you would see that your chances and success of of building a successful company is 20%, while the failure rate is still 80%, because those 80 people have said no to you. Now you go and reiterate your pitch and start focusing on those 80 people again. Go and pitch them again. Don't go and contact new people. You have to try and convince the same people and understand that why did they say no in the first place. Go and reiterate your idea and pitch again, and then come back and pitch them again after a couple of weeks. Now when you do that, you have to make sure that out of those first 100 people that you've contacted, you try and convince about 70-80 people. Now if you're able to convince 80 people to pay you that first $1 traction, the best part is now you have validated your idea, right? And during this entire 3 to 6 months of process, this is a very labor intensive process, by the way, but it will help you save a lot of money, because once you start building up a product, there is no going back, because you will be burning capital like crazy. You would be hiring people, you would be investing your money, you would be raising capital, for an example. So the money flow is going to be crazy with almost zero expectation of returns immediately. That's going to happen. So it's better to spend all your time on the idea stage, because it will also help you to keep on understanding what your customers really want. And again, people who have pain would sit down and talk to you for hours and tell you like their entire problem set. So this is where, when you convince those 80 people, right, now your success rate is 80-20, and 80-20 is a very favorable ratio for any founder to take that risk, that hey, there is a chance of me being successful by 80%. Now build an MVP and use that MVP and deliver your MVP to those people who have initially trusted you, right? They become your early adopter, and when they see the product into reality, there's a lot of emotions that are attached, right? And these are the people who would talk about you, who would start talking about you on the internet, right? This is where success stories are born. So when you do it in this particular fashion, the chances of you actually being successful is a lot higher. But again, this requires a lot of work. And again, the best part is that if you're not able to convince enough people, you can just refund people the money back. That's the best part, right? It's $1, a lot of amount, but again, you've taken something, you can just refund that. So it's not going to be too taxing for you either, because again, you're going to be refunding that 3,000-4,000 rupees, right? Which is about $50 to $80. So refund that back, and you know for the fact that at least you did enough validation. And sometimes always remember that the idea that you have could be too early depending on the market situation as well. So it's not that your idea could be bad, but it's just that the market scenario currently doesn't support that idea at this point of stage. And this is what happened with my failure, right? When I built my startup, and when it failed, it was just too early of a time for me to even build it, because the technology was not that advanced as it is right now. The amount of open source projects that are available today weren't there. And this is why I was able to build the project in a much better way, because I also found a much better developer, much better person, which I initially, like when all my previous companies, I was more about just hiring people locally in my city, right, which was in Mumbai. Or when I was in LA, just hire people locally over there. There was no concept of me focusing on remote. This time, when I took the approach of remote, I started finding better people as well. So all of the factors sort of really kicks in, and this is how like you really drive that idea of $100 concept.
Udit, I basically want to understand a little bit about the importance of personal branding that you've realized. You basically first, took over Twitter. Now there's LinkedIn, which you're working on very, very regularly. What's the overall content strategy, or personal branding strategy, as they call it?
So until last year, honestly, I did not care about personal branding, right? I did not focus on it at all. But then I spoke with a good friend of mine. He told me that, oh, that's like, you have like 10, 12 plus years of experience in the industry. You have some fantastic knowledge. There are other like creators who are already creating like plagiarized contents from here and there. They're just Googling and like copying and pasting on social media, and people are loving those sort of content. So why don't you go ahead and start sharing, right? And I was also looking for ways to sort of increase the distribution and brand reach for PitchGround at the same time. So I was like, why don't I go ahead and try out few platforms, right? So I initially tried to focus on Instagram, but Instagram was not really my cup of tea, because I cannot dance, right? I cannot dance and create videos. TikTok was again a big no for me, because the audience was quite irrelevant when I looked at the platform. This is before TikTok got banned by the Indian government. So both the platforms were a complete no. and that's when I tried to use Instagram a bit, LinkedIn a bit. Again, it did not work out for me. I tried to create some videos on YouTube. It did not work out for me. So I finally I thought, like, I think let me give Twitter try again, because the last time I tried Twitter prior to that was 2009 or 10. If you look, my account was probably registered in 2008 or 2009. I registered on my birthday, if I remember correctly. But then when I saw that all the contents were just politics, like about a decade ago, right? Stopped using it. And I think a lot of people stopped using it. And the Indian ecosystem itself, the startup ecosystem, wasn't that mature, by the way. So a number of people available online was quite less. So then last year I was like, let me give Twitter a retry again. But this time what I did was, rather than jumping on the platform, I did a lot of research, right? So I've always taken a lot of data-driven approach with most of the things that I do, which I didn't do with a lot of these other platforms. So I sat down for a few months, worked on some of the APIs, downloaded a lot of top accounts, right? I downloaded their entire tweets to understand what worked, what did not work. A lot of data analysis went into it, and again, this is where a lot of my development skills sort of kicks in, right? Because I can do all of these things without needing to bother my team, without needing to bother my CTO, because this is a complete waste of time for utilizing his time for something like this, which we don't even know is going to work out or not, right? So I used all of those API. I was approved. My accounts were approved for the usage of API. So I downloaded a lot of these content to really understand that what really makes the platform work, right? Because I wanted to grow fast, I wanted to grow quick, and I wanted to understand if I can really play with the algorithm, right? And the beauty about Twitter as the API is that they give you access to everything. Like, except for I think someone's DM, you can pretty much download anything using the API. That's the beauty about it. And if you know some Google Data Studio on top of that, you can easily build some models and send some data to Google Data Studio and have some nice graphs and charts created using the API, right? So I ended up creating some of those, sent all of those data to Google Data Studio and started understanding some of the accounts, so why it really worked. And 15th of September 2021 is when I restarted my entire journey of Twitter. I know this date specifically because I that was my sister's birthday, and I was like, let me like give Twitter a try again. So, but the moment I started using Twitter a bit, I was hit with COVID. My entire family was hit with COVID last year in October. So I pretty much like restarted my journey back in November, and then I started realizing, I think the first few things that I have to do with Twitter has to be focused on understanding who I am as a person. Because it's very important that if you are starting with your personal brand, you need to have your own voice, you need to have your own identity, right? You cannot just go and copy people. That's a big no, right? You can understand and learn from them, but you need to have your own identity. That was very, very important. So for me, I understood that, look, I know about marketing, I know about sales, I know about SaaS. That's all I know. So my contents would revolve around that. And if you see my bio, it clearly says that's all I talk about. I don't know about anything else. So I realized that it's very important. I also remember watching a video from Gary Vee, and where he said that just talk about what you know. If you love cooking, just talk about how to make food. That's it. You do not need to talk about anything else, right? If you're passionate about communication, just talk about that, right? If you're passionate about recording videos, talk about that. Find your passion and make sure that you build your identity. That's very important when it comes to building personal brand, because personal branding means being personal with people. So you have to expose your vulnerability in public. If you cannot do that, you are not doing personal branding, right? You are just trying to use people at that stage. So that's when I started realizing that the accounts that were doing extremely well, they were all vulnerable. They've all shared the most vulnerable side of their life, right? And this is where I decided to put up my story of me getting into depression. And that was the turning point, because that entire thread, it went viral. I think there were like thousands of shares. They were like, I think I probably generated like millions of impressions, if I remember correctly. that just went viral. My account went overnight from like 1,500 people following me to like 4 or 5 thousand people, and that's huge overnight, right? And since then, I did not stop. I started understanding more and more about it, and then my tweets kind of like I also nailed down what is really required to trend tweets as well, right? I figured that algo part of them as well before they changed. So now that algo doesn't work, by the way. So I was able to crack down those, and this is the thing about social media, right? You have to utilize a platform at the right time, at the right stage itself, because algos keep on changing. The algos keep on getting updated. So what has worked last year might not work this year again, right? This year things are working very differently. So it's very important to take advantage of that, because the platform is ready to push distribution. And also at the same time, you have to be consistent regardless of whichever platform that you use, because if someone else is not posting the content, the social media has to push someone, right? And you could be that person at that point of time. And this is why it's very important to be consistent, by the way. There's no other reason. So in this case, I started pushing up a lot of content. Again, a lot of my approach was completely data driven, right? I knew what to do this time, and I was very strategic in terms of pushing my content. And again, I used all of my copywriting skills and my storytelling skills, because when you are a salesperson, you naturally become a very good storyteller, right? That's a very natural stepping stone, because when you sell, you have to talk a lot. Even right now, like if you see, a lot of talking comes very naturally, right? I do not have to sit down and think about what to build the story, how to build the story. This just comes very naturally. So when you're into sales, when you get into sales, just have to talk a lot in general. So this was what I started doing, and my tweets started going viral after viral after viral. My threads started going viral, and that gave to a point where the account grew very massively, right? So I would say pretty much in less than a years of time, today my account grew from like 1,500 followers to about, like, I think it's roughly around 43,000 followers or so. And today, like, some of the top VCs are following me, some of the top SaaS companies, SaaS founders are following me over there. There are a lot of celebrities that are following me. Pretty much a lot of news people are the top news people are following me. So they all look up for anything around SaaS, startup ecosystem, anything around it from Udit today, because they know for the fact that Udit will post authentic stuff. And this is why I'm very careful about the kind of tweets also I do, right? Some of the tweets I avoid, like making a lot of generic tweets, and usually my tweets also have a lot of interaction, right? There's a lot of conversation, and I am always posting my vulnerable side, right? So this is where I have built first sales literally in public, right from day zero, when it was just like in the rebuilding stage, right? I have been building ever since then. So people have seen that I've built authentic stuff right from the beginning, and more importantly, I've never shied away from sharing everything that has worked for me. And I think that has been one of the biggest reasons why, like, I've really got the love from so many people from Twitter, is because it has genuinely benefited them and their growth journey, without me going out there and trying to turn everything into courses and try to sell courses, right? Which is what a lot of people try to do. So I have been, like, just been very open with people and shared out everything that has worked and also that did not work for me. But more importantly, I think the vulnerable side of me, that I've been so vulnerable, that if I failed, so in September, I wanted to start with like a 30 video 30-day challenge, and I failed, right? And I spoke about it. I got a lot of conversation around it, that people were like, it's completely okay. So I think it's very important that when you are doing personal branding, you have to be personal with people. If you're not ready to be vulnerable and share the most vulnerable side of yours, don't do personal branding, because then it will just look fake. So that's how my Twitter journey started. Then about, I think 4 or 5 months ago is when I restarted using LinkedIn. Got some good friends who were like, I think you should also push content on LinkedIn, it will help you grow. And I was like, whatever, I'm loving Twitter. But then I decided to give LinkedIn a try again. I posted about 3 content over there, and that's when I discovered about LinkedIn Accelerator program. So I'm like one of the 200 people that got picked up by LinkedIn for the LinkedIn Accelerator program. Had to fill up like a 4-hour long lengthy form of theirs. It was massive, right? Like massive. So I spent about 4 hours filling up that entire form. Had zero hopes, because they'd asked for 3 of my last post, on LinkedIn, and I had only done 3 posts, right? So I just post that I'm gonna get picked up. But I think my thesis and the fact that I've been like very genuine and open about what I want to do and how I want to do, because when you had to apply for a like app, you had to also put up your thesis, like why should LinkedIn back you up? Why should LinkedIn help you in this journey, right? So you have to be very authentic, and I think that authenticity is what really something that their team liked. They picked me into the program, so now like I'm like very lucky to be a part of the very first LinkedIn Accelerator program cohort. Met with a lot of good people in the cohort, but also connected with LinkedIn. My LinkedIn had about, I think, 2,000 followers about 5 months ago. Now it's roughly around, I think, 22 to 23,000. So it's been growing again, been quiet for the last 2-3 weeks because of health issues, but this is where my entire journey is. So now I'm looking forward to like continue focusing on these two platforms, while also looking to like be a lot more consistent on YouTube very, very, very soon. So think about personal branding is you have to be vulnerable, right? You have to be personal. You have to also ensure that you're just talking about what you know. Do not try to talk about things that you do not know about, because the moment you start getting traction, there are people that are smarter than you always on the internet, right? It just takes a matter of couple of Google search to figure out and burn you alive, right, on social media. So if you want to avoid that, make sure that you stick with what you know. So do not copy, plagiarize other people's content, and try to create. I've seen so many people trying to convert a lot of my threads into reels, but when they end up getting clients, right, they were like, hey, this is Udit's content. You are just trying to turn that into videos. People are smart. People can figure things out today. Be what you know, because if you are trying to go personal brand, you'll also get invited to a lot of such podcasts, right? And when people see and listen, they figure out like this person knows their stuff or not. There, people are very smart today to understand and know things, because people are really aware. So this is how personal branding really like kicked in. Again, it was very unplanned for. It just happened, right? It just happened to happen, and again, the kind of love that I got in return, I think, has been pretty incredible. And in this entire journey, made some very good friends like you.
Hey, thanks a lot for that. Okay, what are the key trends you see in the SaaS industry? Tech talent is extremely scarce and expensive. What are your views on that? And how to onboard the right talent? What are the key risks? What are the key risks and the main reasons a SaaS company fails? Purely a SaaS question. What do you have to say about that?
So I'm going to talk about the current trend, right? So the current trend is all about AI writing, right? Everyone is implementing GPT-3 right now in various ways. There are some very interesting projects coming out. I think one of the projects that recently got funded was they created a GPT-3 based keyboard for mobile, right? So now that keyboard is sort of helping a lot of people out with pre-answers and a lot of those things which
Wow.
possible. So again, people are coming up with a lot of cool projects that will basically help people, right? So yeah, I think GPT-3 is already grown and become $100 billion industry. This is an industry that did not even exist about two years ago, right? So in just 2 years, $100 billion market cap potentially. That's how the industry has grown now. So
But OpenAI is a private company held by Microsoft, right? It's not an open source project.
no, it's not an open source project.
It's a private project.
Yeah, it's a private project, but again, companies are coming in, and it has also made Amazon to come out with their own GPT-3 competitor. So it's currently private beta right now, so it should be available to, if you go ahead and apply, if you just Google, you'll find out more information, because again, Microsoft wants to lead, AWS wants to lead when it comes to tech. So they waited for a good number of years for GPT-3 to really get mature, the market to get mature, so that they can end. This is what Microsoft is known for, right? They wait for this is what like Amazon and Microsoft are known for. They wait for a lot of industries to sort of really mature before entering into that industry, right? So it's kind of like that Maruti situation where Maruti is like, we don't want to build an EV, but then now that the market is a little mature, people are ready and accepting and buying. They are like, okay, we're gonna dive in now, right? So that's what happened. So the trend right now is GPT-3. A lot of AI tools are coming out. So On top of that, a lot of supply chain management softwares are also coming out right now that are getting like funded left, right, and center, because as D2C itself, right, the entire e-commerce industry is growing. If an industry grow, it also comes and generates a lot of problem, right? So there's an entire issue with supply chain management. There's always going to be an issue with supply chain management, because you're dealing with people, right? You're dealing with transfer of like products from one warehouse to other warehouse to third warehouse to like people purchasing. So those two are like the current trend right now at the moment in the SaaS industry that are like pretty hot, I would say. Apart from that, like outreaching tools are very hot right now at the moment, because the market is sort of really maturing up further, and they have started realizing that emails are one of the best ways to really acquire customers. So, but again, this is a very difficult product to code, because building a scheduler is actually harder than just using an AI API, right? So, schedulers are the hardest.
Interesting.
So I would say like sales tools are really sort of trending up right now. So there's a new category that's been created, which is known as the pre-CRM category. So outreaching tools are basically in the pre-CRM category. So this entire pre-CRM category is getting pretty hot right now at the moment. And again, companies like Outreach.io right now is leading from the front. I think they're already like $4 billion company right now. So those are the trends that we are seeing. And anyways, whenever there is a recession, people usually don't spend on marketing and they spend more on sales in general, right? So you also have to understand the market scenario as well, like what software, what sort of trend works, and softwares are going to sell accordingly, because that's the beauty about tech. So that's the trend, I would say, right now. And again, this trend would change in a month or 2 months of time, right? So be careful in terms of what you're building up, because if you're not ready to spend the next 5-10 years of your life into building something, don't build it.
Yeah.
Expecting an exit in 6 months or a year is highly unlikely, unless until you're a very seasoned professional, you know what you're doing, you have the capital to build, sell, and exit, right? Unless until you know what you're doing, don't do that. So be careful. Now, the second question was with regards to tech talent.
Yeah.
Really scared. Actually, that's not the case. Tech talent are plenty. It's just that if you are in India, you need to stop looking for tech talents outside of Bangalore, right? There's a whole world outside of Bangalore. So start looking for tech talents outside, right? So we hire a lot of our tech talent from Europe. There are plenty of incredible people that you find that are actually cheaper than developers that you would find in India today, right? And also there was a stat that was out there from GitHub that only 4% of Indian developers codes are actually implemented and deployed. So this means that most of the developers' work needs to get reworked by someone who is a better developer, right? So again, go out of Bangalore, go out of India, and start looking for better tech talents. Today, again, because of remote, these people, the people that are getting whatever they're getting paid in India, like those talents are all available outside of India as well. So start looking for talents outside of India, and you'll find like plenty of amazing, incredible talents. There's also a platform known as 20mn.io where you can hire a lot of like FANG developers who usually do a lot of moonlighting basically. So you can try and find some good developers from 20mn.io. So that's a very good platform again to find very refined and high quality developers, especially during the initial stages. And if you need like fractional CTOs, you can use 20mn.io to find them. And again, higher quality people, even if you get like less number of hours of theirs, because what they can produce in like 1 hour, the other fresher will probably take like a month or maybe 2 months, or may not even produce a similar result, right? So be careful about that. So that's with regards to the second one. And I think how to onboard the right talent, I think you just need to develop the ability to sell, right? Because again, if you are building a company, you need to sell everywhere. You need to sell to your employees, you need to sell to your co-founders, you need to sell to customers. You need to develop the ability to sell, to attract more and more people. So again, if you're building some good personal branding, this will also help you to attract sort of good and right sort of people. And lastly, what are the key risks and main reasons as company fail? It's because of lack of distribution. There's no other reason. If you don't build a good product, then definitely like it's gonna fail. Build a good product, but focus on ensuring that You have done a lot of research as well and focus on distribution, right? Like, in fact, build an audience even before selling your product or building your product, and try to implement the $100 concept that I've mentioned. And when you're building an MVP, don't go out there and build an MVP. Use a platform like Bubble or Edalo to build your no-code MVPs for your SaaS, because again, it gets very expensive, right? When you get into development. So start small, focus more on distribution, build less, sell more. So those are the answers to all these questions.
I think personal brand builds over a particular number of years, and with experience you get like I think a major audience based in that. But how do you talk about two things over there? Or should you be like, okay, Twitter pay one and then LinkedIn pay one? Do you have any insight regarding that?
So always remember that when you're building a personal brand, right, it doesn't matter what platform you're using, right? You're that one individual. So if you look at my LinkedIn as well, I talk about the same thing, right? I talk about sales, I talk about marketing, and I talk about SaaS over there. I don't talk about anything else beyond this. I talk about startup ecosystem, right? I give my about what's happening in the startup ecosystem. So I just talk about these things because that's all I know. I don't know anything beyond this. Even if I know, I don't want to dilute my brand beyond this, right? Your story is something that's very different, but what you constantly keep on talking about on a regular basis, that is what helps you to become a thought leader. So it's very important that when you're building up your personal brand, you act as a thought leader, you convey your message as a thought leader, and when you're giving your opinion as well, right, about anything. So for example, about moonlighting, for an example, right? I'm going to be writing a post about it on LinkedIn, maybe by the end of this week or maybe by next week, because I'm just trying to first of all understand, right? And before that, I used Twitter and I just posted a tweet about it. What are your sort of experiences around moonlighting, right? I'm just asking and getting feedbacks, because it's very important to also understand what people are thinking, right? Many a times people just read a couple of headlines and they feel things are wrong, right? Instead of going and diving and understanding why certain companies are doing something, right? So I try to give my perspective from the companies and to people, and I try to explain it, because again, with me being a salesperson, right? A salesperson have an habit of really breaking things down in a very simpler way to explain to people, because when you're trying to sell, you have to simplify things when you're trying to sell, right? And this reflects in my post as well. So rather than coming out and being very aggressive about a certain post, I really break it down and talk about a certain perspective that helps people to understand. So I don't talk about 3-4 different things, right? I talk about everything that revolves around the same thing. So that's very, very important. So if you see, I don't talk about gaming, even though I game.
Right? And I have never seen a post.
Again, it's very important to stick with what you know, right? I'm not one of the best gamers in the world, so I don't talk about it, right? I just enjoy games for myself, for my peace of mind, for me to give break to myself. That's all, right? So this is why it's very important to stick with what you know. That's how you identify your identity, right? So now let's say that I'm not going on Instagram and creating dancing reels or entertainment reels over there just to get followers over there, right? I'm not doing that. Or I'm not trying to create something on Instagram that will completely dilute my brand. Now, what I do on Instagram is I post exclusive stories about how I'm building things in public, right? About my life, about my travel stuffs, right? That I'm going to events. And again, my travel stuffs are mostly around, again, work as well. So there I am posting a very different things, because I finally realized what I need to post on Instagram now. So my stories are very sort of intrigued over there, and the way I communicate with people over there is on a much more personal level, right? But that again revolves around the same thing. So when you're building a personal brand, it doesn't matter what platform you're using, you have to talk about the same thing. Now, let's say that if I enjoy cooking, for an example, now suddenly I'm not going to end up starting a YouTube channel for cooking, right? Because that will start diluting your brand. Because remember that a certain number of people, now imagine if I just talk about recipes suddenly on my tweets, right? Someone like Sohail would be like, what the fuck is wrong with this? Why is he talking about certain recipes? Because that's not what I'm following him, right? I'm following him to learn more about growth hacks, to learn about startups. This is why I'm following him. So when you change your niche completely, the problem, or you work on two different niches, which is poles apart. Okay. The problem is you end up confusing your people who have started following you. that's where the problem comes in. This is why you have to be very careful, and you cannot talk about two different things unless and until again those two things are very similar to each other, which is like, let's say in my case, marketing and sales, right?
Yeah.
Or startups and SaaS, they all go hand in hand, basically. That's how you build things around.
Understandable. So a follow-up question on this. So basically, I work in the financial market. So what I have seen, so even I consume content, right, on a regular basis. Times there, it's like the things which are out there is for a very beginner level. Maybe okay, if you go and read about a little bit about finance on some post, it might be okay. Top 5 stocks these are doing. Top 5 stocks generating ARR, whatever it is. Okay, it might be like that, but that is not directly putting any value to the person who is consuming that content.
No, that's wrong. Why do you assume
No.
that that's not adding any value? Because again, remember that what can
Okay.
be very basic for you can be very advanced for someone else, right? Because this is where there is a room for content to be created for everyone. Now, when I talk about the SaaS thing, right,
Mhm.
I'm talking about very basic things right now, which might be very advanced for a lot of people, but that's super basic for me, right? So you have to understand that every people go through a certain phase. So for example, when I was in LA, I learned how to cook from YouTube because I had to obviously cook my food, right? I cannot just go out there and buy food every single day. So I would just watch YouTube contents, see how the foods are cooked, and I would just try to replicate and make that, right? So in that case, if someone would have said ki yaar, matlab, you don't even know how to make a roti, which is like so basic, right? Now I'm trying to consume that content, how to make roti, how to make the atta, how to like make a dough, right? I'm trying to learn that how much water to be put, because if you end up putting excess water, right, you end up not having the right dough, and you're not gonna have the right sort of roti for yourself. So it's very important to understand that what is very basic for you can be very advanced for someone else. So there is again room for every person and all kinds of contents to be created.
So as you said perfectly, because there was an application of what you learned from the YouTube. It was just an example, still there was some application, right? But in finance, usually the content is very broad. There are 1,000 things, but only 3-4 things work in reality. In very detailed manner. Maybe I'll put blogs also accordingly, and I'll link the blogs with the caption and stuff. That content is, the people who read that content, they like it a lot, but I'm not able to gather a larger audience.
That's because again, as you go to the top of the ladder, right, and when you start focusing on a very high sort of advanced content, the amount of people really reduces. So when you focus on a lot more generic content, right, it reaches to a lot more broader audience at that stage, because the amount of people. So if I start talking about APIs over here, right, most of the people won't even understand. If I start talking about the API, and when I was talking about, like, if I start talking about codes specifically now, right, most of the people would leave over here. If I start talking about the high level of funnels, high level of marketing strategies right now, a lot of people would leave, because a lot of people might still find a lot of basic content a lot more relevant for them. So as you go advanced, the number of people would decrease massively in your funnel itself. That's because the amount of people who have reached to that certain level is very less. So that's why they would be consuming a lot less content, and they would be consuming a very different kind of a content altogether. So now if I just see, let's say, someone talking about SEO, right? That's too basic for me. I don't even consume those content, right? Or if someone is talking about performance marketing, I know that there's a lot of advanced concept that can be applied, and this person is still talking about just putting up an ad this way or talking about this way, right? So everyone goes to a certain level. So as you keep on creating more advanced content, you'll feel that the number of audience is very less, and that's bound to happen because people have not reached to that level. Or you need to start focusing on the right ICP as well, right? So when I'm talking about right ICP over here, so for example, you might be creating a lot of contents, or you might be too young to attract people who are in their 40s, because many a times, remember that people who are in their 40s might have that ego that I don't want to learn from someone young, right?
Yeah, that is happening.
Better, I would not learn from them. I would rather learn someone from 60, right? There's that ego out there. There is that a lot of professional egos, right, out there that a lot of people might not openly say, but this happens. So they might not consume those content. So this is why as you go to the top of the ladder, you would see that there are very different kind of people altogether, and the kind of content they would consume is going to be very different.
Yeah, just an insight, but the conversion rates which I've had, so I tried everything. I've been trying for around 3 years now, but the conversion rate is very high when with those people, and the conversion rates are completely very different with the other broader group. That's what I've noticed.
Trying to focus on the top 1%, and that's where the money is, right? The top 1% is where the money is. So focus on people. I always say one thing, right? Focus on people with problem and focus on people with money. That's when you make money.
Thanks, Udit, for the answers.
No worries.
So when you build in public, right? So should you focus on like one platform, or you should be focusing on different platforms as well? So
I would say initially just pick one platform, just focus on one platform, nail it down. Because growing on one platform alone is very difficult. And the fact that if you can grow on one platform, usually there's a big chance that about 5% of your audience will also use other platforms as well, right? Not everyone uses every platform. At least 5% of that audience will use other platforms that help you to kickstart whenever you're starting your other sort of platform journey. So one of the major reasons again why my LinkedIn grew so quickly from 2,000 to like 23,000 again in less than 5 months has been because a lot of people who were consuming my content on Twitter, they were the similar audience. They started seeing my contents on LinkedIn as well, right? And they were like, hey, I've seen this guy, right? I know this guy. Udit is from Twitter. Love his content. And they start following me right away. So focus on just one platform, right? If you see many a times that a lot of YouTubers today who have migrated to Instagram, it's the same audience who were on YouTube. They started following them on Instagram, and their growth was very rapid because of that, because they got their first 100k users maybe in a matter of just weeks and not even years that has taken other people, right? But if you just focus on multiple platforms, what's going to happen is that you won't be consistent because it takes a lot of time to create content, right? So I tried YouTube almost 3 times, right? And if you go into my YouTube account, you will see that there's huge gaps happening, right? I get consistent, then I stop. I get consistent, then I stop. I get consistent. But with Twitter, if you look at my Twitter, you won't find a single day where there's no tweet from my account, right? Or if you go into my LinkedIn, except for the last couple of weeks, you would see that I've been posting contents every day on my LinkedIn, right? Because I have been able to find that time that I can spend half an hour on creating written text content. I can do that. But I'm not able to find time to create a video which will take me 2 hours because again, that's a lot of commitment and I'm stuck with actually running a business, right? I'm running 2 brands right now and it takes up a lot of my time. I have 25 plus people I'm dealing with at the moment, and plus like hundreds of thousands of customers on top of that are pinging me for issues or this and that for any reason, collaboration, like all of those. Plus there's a lot of other things that are happening, right? So it becomes very hectic. So I would say focus on one thing, nail it down, and once you've nailed down that platform, your growth for other platforms and the migration to other platforms will become far more easier then.
Because I was like struggling because with the same consistency thing.
Also helps us quite a lot, right? Because when you do that, you have to just write 280 characters every single day. It gives you that peace of mind that, okay, I have to write this. Now imagine you have to now work on a reel on top of that, and a long form video on top of that, and a blog post on top of that. It's very time consuming. You cannot do all of these things without building a team.
There's one more offshoot question here that's from this is basically whatever platform you choose, the kind of growth that you see on that platform, that basically gives you validation that whatever I'm doing is right or wrong. What I've seen is in Twitter, it's a little bit difficult. I mean, depending on the amount of effort that you put in, the ROIs come much easier on, let's say, a LinkedIn or an Instagram rather than on Twitter, right? So what is your take on that?
That's actually not true, you know. So the platform that works out for you, that becomes easier basically. That's a reality. So if you ask to someone who has cracked Instagram, right, they would say that creating and growing on Instagram has been far more easier than Twitter. So if you ask me, I would say growing on Twitter has been far more easier for me than any other platform, and Twitter is what has really enabled and unlocked all the doors and opportunities for me today, right? Like all the networks that I've built, VCs, networks, investors, so many people that I've built today has been because of Twitter, right? And when I'm trying to sort of grow on Instagram, I find it very difficult to grow on Instagram, like very difficult, right? It's not just about just recording some reel and posting. I've seen so many people doing and posting reels every day, but I don't see any traction on their accounts, right? So it's not easy, right? Every platform has got its own charm. Every platform has got its own sort of user base that requires a certain kind of a content. So on Instagram, you have to have a really sort of big side for you, right? Either you are a big shot, right? You have a lot of money and you are really like branding the heck out of yourself as a personal brand, right? When people see you sitting and talking with a lot of people who are rich and have money, you will see a fast growth on Instagram at that stage. Or the matter of fact that if you're very good entertainer, right, you would grow because that's a kind of audience that's out there. So you have to understand this audience. Now on Twitter, you would see that the moment if people are posting videos about dancing, right, those people are gonna get unfollowed right away, because people on Twitter have a no nonsense policy, right? They don't tolerate like shitty contents over there. They don't tolerate anything that's outside of like startup ecosystem or outside of like work, marketing, sales. This is what Twitter has really identified itself, and a lot of like ecosystem has identified itself. And apart from that, there's like the whole politician thing, right? Like you're going and also expecting updates from companies. Versus on LinkedIn, you don't expect updates from companies, but you're expecting thought process and leaders and the founders of a certain company talking about certain things, giving their opinion and sharing their strategies, right? So again, every platform has been very different to each other. So the kind of again growth that I've seen, I've been trying to replicate that growth on YouTube. I couldn't, but a lot of other people have been, right? They find YouTube to be far better and easier platform for them than as compared to any other platform. So I think it's very opinionated. Whatever has worked out for you is the best platform for you in the end. 30 days, be consistent on a platform, right? Like post contents. And when I'm saying 30 days, straight up 30 days, right? So on YouTube, put up 30 contents. On Instagram, put up 30 contents, and see what you really enjoy, right? I would also say that don't really follow the vanity metrics. It's easier to say that, but then again, I would say that don't really like focus very, very heavily on the vanity metrics, because again, not necessary is that the number of followers really equates to the number of conversions. Ultimately, your goal should be to convert them into a paying customer. And if you can do that with 4,000 followers, I would rather have 4,000 followers than having 4 million followers that's not going to buy from me, right? It's very important to understand that. So don't focus too much on it. I don't care about like how many people are now following me on Twitter, whether I'm going to add like 1,000 followers this week or not. I am literally not bothered about that. What I just make sure is my quality and my content is quality. That's all. It needs to help whoever is going to watch that content. It needs to help them in a certain way, or it needs to make them understand about my opinion. That's all, right? As long as I focus on that, trust me, the engagements come in automatically, right? So that's what people don't realize, that ultimately it's not about the number of followers, but it's the number of people that will actually trust you enough to buy from you. It's about that metrics.
Credibility.
Absolutely. So if I post today and ask those 40,000 people to buy something, I'm definitely sure that they're not going to say no. At least like 40% of them would end up buying from me, right? Because that's the kind of trust and credibility I've built with them. And I would rather focus on that rather than having 2 million followers, where those people are just following me because they fancy my life, right? That's not the right kind of a following, because you're then focusing on the aspiring audience, and aspiring audience, they don't have any money.
So what are the pros and cons of getting an investor or bootstrapping it completely?
So having an investor, basically Maya, is like trying to sell a piece of your soul to someone that you're never going to get back, right? So the question is, do you want someone to own your soul? That's the real question that you need to ask yourself, right? Because your equity is the only sort of asset that you have as a founder. So are you ready to have someone have that piece of your soul, right? Because having an investor, while it might sound very fancy, it's not easy, because now you are responsible to respond to someone. You might hate taking up that call, but you have to take that call, right? You have to respond to that person. You have to reply to every text. If they message you every day, you have to respond to every day. If they call you at even like 10 p.m., you have to take up the call. You're not going to ignore that call, because you know you're calling for yourself for trouble. So that's a challenge, right? Those are the cons. The pros is that you do get funds to accelerate your growth, right? Which otherwise is very difficult, which otherwise is very, very hard in general, because again, one of the biggest reasons, and with all the tech talent and everything, all the talents, not just tech talent, being very expensive, building a team is very difficult today. Building a good team is even harder, right? It's not about just raising capital. So access to capital has become far more easy in the last couple of years as compared to what it has been in the previous years. So again, the pros is that you would be able to accelerate your growth, but that's a question that you really need to ask. Why did you start entrepreneurship? For me, um, it was, I want freedom. I chose entrepreneurship for freedom, right? I want to take fast decisions. I don't want to get on a call with someone, except again for my co-founders, right? I don't want to get on a call trying to explain in a board meeting, get an approval for the next 3 months, 6 months, because I love moving fast. And I chose entrepreneurship, and I think that's the biggest reason why, like, I'm a big advisor of like bootstrapping, but then again, I'm also an investor, right? I'm an investor in like 23 startups today. As of now, about to invest in my 24th startup very soon. So it's very different being on the back seat rather than being on the driver's seat, right? So I would rather like hire an Uber instead of driving an Uber, basically. So that's a decision that you have to make when you are trying to sort of either going bootstrapping or trying to raise capital.
Oh, that's a beautiful analogy, bro.
Yeah, it is. Thank you so much.
Driving an Uber versus hiring an Uber. Actually, this is something which people really glamorize the whole funding aspect of things, and we have to blame the media for it. It's primarily because that's where they can show the big numbers, right? And that's how the whole startup ecosystem has been. But if you really, I still believe that you should always look at starting a startup as starting a business of your own, and that's actually what it is. There's nothing more to it. People view investor money as revenue when it is not. And
the thing is, Sohail, that a lot of people fail to realize that this is the biggest step that they're taking. Then they're not getting that equity back, right? More importantly, people have forgotten that there is also an option to take loan, right? There, if you look at about the traditional India, right, 80% of India and the revenue that runs in India are the MSMEs. And how do those MSMEs operate, right? Those MSMEs operate by raising capital through loans, right? My dad, I still remember when he started his business, he gave away, he took the loan against his home, right? He risked his entire family. He took the loan against the home and the property, but paid it off, right? And today he owns the entire piece of his own company. He is not reliable to respond to anyone. He can go whenever he wants. He can come back whenever he wants. He can put any kind of efforts that he wants, right? He's built a great asset because he runs a typical factory, basically, right? Like how the traditional MSMEs work. So again, people don't see an option. Even we at PitchGround, we have utilized credit cards, right? Which is a form of a loan, basically, right? It's a short-term loan of 45 days that we get. So I've utilized that. Even right now, we take loans from different revenue-based financing companies. So it's not that like we don't take capital, right? But I take capital on the interest rates, right? You can get capital access for 12 to 15% very easily. Then there are platforms like, there's so many platforms that are coming out, which is under the name of like alternate investments. But if you're a company, just go out there, take money on 18%. That's not a problem because 18% is still basically free money. If you can drive 2x, 3x, 4x ROS, 18% is peanuts at that point of stage, right? So again, take loan. That should be the first thing in your mind. Try to save as much equity as possible. People and founders, right, who talk so much about things today. I'm not going to name anyone in this podcast to create controversy, but again, these people, right, who have become unicorns, so-called unicorns, they own like 3%, 4% in their own company, right? And they are like, I would rather own 3% in a unicorn rather than having like 100%. Bullshit, right? Trust me, they wish they wouldn't have sold that much equity in the back of their mind, right? While you can say all the things in the world, they today have less equity than an ESOP pool. ESOP pool is bigger than what the founders own today. And again, second big problem is founders want everything today. They want to build a unicorn today. Just enjoy the process, right? Building a company is you enjoying every single day, you facing those challenges every single day. And when you do that, you also optimize your company for margin, for better margin, because businesses improve on margins. If you look at all the traditional, right? I'm a big fan of Asian Paints as a company, right? Was born in what, like 1940. Took them almost what, like 80 plus years to build where they are, and they are again constantly optimizing their margins. That's why you see them producing so much free cash flow, so much money. You look at Reliance, right? L&T, ITC, all of these companies. The reason why they're making so much money as compared to the modern startups, the reason behind that is they have optimized their whole business at every single level, and that's why those businesses are doing so well. You look at Geo, Reliance, right? Why are they making so much crazy cash? If you have ever seen those financials, you will be blown away. Like producing 40,000 crores worth of free cash flow every single year, right? That's no joke. The reason again has been they work on still those traditional way, and they keep on focusing on distribution. So again, take those traditional methods as well, right? Take loan if you can.
I'll tell you what the problem is, right? So having been interacted with so many startups who, either are in the club or, in general want to grow or start a company, the problem is, what I believe is, people really don't have faith in their own idea. And that's why for them, shelling out equity is cheaper than actually taking a loan, because they think, yaar, abhi to iski value kuch bhi nahi. Even if I lose, 50% of zero is also zero, and 10% of zero is also zero. The moment, and that faith is basically given to them by an external body like an investor, and then they start working on it. Majority of the people treat the investment that has come in as revenue themselves. They basically start splitting it as salary, and then whatever experiments that they have in their mind, they basically start doing that. And then if they fail, they don't owe anything to anyone, because an investor does not ask their money back. The moment you take a loan, you're liable. And this, if people will start taking loans, and this is what a lot of mature startups do when they start doing debt financing, is when they know that, hey, this is gonna work, I know that I can take it, I just need this much amount of money more. Problem is, that faith in the first time founder is very low, and that's the reason why they're very eager to shell out equity and go the equity route rather than the loans route. What do you think?
No, I 100% agree with you on that. And I think, like, look, there are good founders, but again, if you end up burning someone's capital thinking it's free money, right? It's very difficult to build a reputation, right? And with today's time and modern world and modern internet, everyone is connected to each other. Especially the moment you get into the top and focus on investors community, right? If you look and ask most people, they know who am I today, right? They know what am I doing, even though they might not be involved, right? But they know about PitchGround, they know about Udit, because I'm connected with some or the other of them. So the moment you get into that 0.1% of India, you will keep meeting the same people again and again and again and again. So cannot burn those, right? So again, you have to be very careful when you are again like sort of raising capital. So just be very careful. Again, take things slow. There's no rush. I think one of the companies that I really sort of like admire is my trip. Prashant.
Yeah, Prashant Pate.
Prashant has done a fantastic job in terms of, again, they also tried to raise capital. It's not that we did not try to raise capital, right? I just tweeted out today as well that every bootstrap founder has tried to raise capital at that point and have failed as well, right? I failed in raising that capital, but I think that is the best thing that has happened to me, because it helped me to optimize business and start focusing and start taking care of my customers rather than taking care of investors, right? And ultimately, there's no business that's being run by investors. It only helps you fuel your distribution, but if you do not take care of your customers, it's not going to grow.
Okay, so I have one last question, Udit, before we close. The investor versus founder question, which has more ROI? Let's put it that way.
I think that's a very interesting question, because I don't invest to sort of make a direct money on investment. Not a lot of people know about this, right? Why I do angel investment. So my thesis is very simple, that I generally do angel investments because it unlocks networking for me. It unlocks direct doors and opportunity for me, which otherwise might not be possible, right? So, for example, I'm in a couple of very popular company. Again, the kind of like sort of direct competitor to builder scams. So I'm not gonna name them, but there's so many other amazing companies out there that I have invested, right? And those founders have helped me with a lot of data points. Those founders have unlocked a lot of doors and opportunities for me directly. So I do angel investments not because I'm potentially expecting a 5x or a 7x or a 10x return. यार उतना तो मैं Facebook ads पे डालूंगा तो मेरे को महीने के end में मिल जाएगा, right? So I can put up that $1 and I can get $5 back on Facebook ads. If I put up $1 on TikTok ads today, I can get 10x back by the end of the month, right? So for me, I do angel investments because I cannot buy that network with ads, right? That network can only be bought, or I can be a part of it if someone makes an introduction to me. And that introduction happens when I give them a check, right? Regardless of the amount, it unlocks that door and opportunity for me because now they're liable. They're liable to shake hands with me. Right? So I do angel investments because of this, and that has really helped and accelerated the growth of First Sales. I've never shared this in anywhere else, but one of the major reasons why First Sales have grown from like zero to $400,000 in ARR in just 4 months, right, has been because of these angel investments, because it has unlocked doors and opportunities for mid-sized companies and enterprises that I'm connected with, because these are the same founders who are also in the cap table of other companies, and they are the ones with problem and they are the ones with money. I told in an earlier statement that if you want to make money, you need to focus on reaching out to people with problem and with money, because they are the ones who will throw all the money in the world to get their problem solved. Right? Why do you think the Gucci's and the Louis Vuittons exist today? Because they're focusing on people with money and problem. Right? They're selling status to people who has money. How do you show status? That's a big problem for people with money. Right? So that's what you focus on. That's where you will make money. But what a lot of people start focusing on is they try to make customers to someone who has no money but a lot of problems. Right?
Oh my God, yeah.
That's where the problem comes in, right? So start focusing on people who has money and who has problem. And this is where I do those angel investments that unlock these doors and opportunity for me and help me to connect with the 0.01% of India today, which otherwise would have been impossible, right? People know me, people know PitchGround, people know First Sales. They might not be a customer right now, but they know about it, right? And that's the most important part. And this is the reason why I do angel investment, which not a lot of people do angel investments for this reason. So I make my ROI back by selling them First Sales, for an example, or selling them services right away. I make my ROI back in a very immediate basis because I don't have a patience to wait for 7 years or 10 years to get 3x, 4x, right? Again, not the reason why. So when we were sort of making our marketing budget, right? So I decided that I'm going to do something very smart this time. I'm going to take some of the budget out and I'm going to invest where, again, that investment will unlock and help me connect with those companies that I really require. Today, I'm connected with a lot of banks because of one of the fintech companies I've invested in. Right, I'm literally like a click away from connecting with any bank, any of the C-level executives in this bank I want, who are the decision makers. Right, I just need to let this startup founder know that, hey, please connect me with him. He's not going to say no to me because I'm on his cap table and I've helped him grow along. So it unlocks the doors and opportunity for you, and that's where I feel that for me, you'll always make more money as a founder than as an investor.
Got it. Very interesting, Udit. I think we can draw the whole podcast to a close. How was your experience, Udit?
I think it was brilliant. I think we had some great conversation. So I hope you guys enjoyed the super crazy insights and how I do things a little differently as compared to other people in general.